Hey, and welcome back to Business Bloopers Laughing Through the Pain. I'm Bethany, your guide through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, management, and everything in between. Each week, we'll dive into outrageous stories, laughable blunders that will remind us all that while business can be serious, it doesn't all have to be work and no play. Now, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into today's episode of Business Bloopers Laughing Through the Pain.
Guys, and welcome back to another episode of Business Bloopers. With me today, I have Eric Zverman with RedPrint. Thank you, Eric, for being with us today. We're so excited to have you on today. So not only do I call Eric a good business friend, but I also call him my business advisor because he has helped me tremendously not make some of the mistakes that he has made or has said he's made in his own business journey. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Eric, and tell us a little bit about you.
Hey, thank you. Yep, so my name's Eric. I own RedPrint Screen Printing here in Irwin, PA. We're like a hop, skip, and a jump here from Bethany's shop, but we primarily focus in on commercial printing and online commerce stores. Yeah, we do primarily work in commercial printing, in some high volume printing, as well as online commerce sales. Which is just a really fancy way of saying we try to make solutions and print solutions for businesses and really events and people's ordeals of all sizes. We've been doing this now since 2015, so it's been knocking on 10 years, which is wild to think about considering I haven't gotten any older, but it's a really, really cool industry. I do genuinely love what I do. I think I'm kind of fortunate in that way. But it definitely, as I'm sure we'll get into today, it's not without its ups and downs and some trials and tribulations along the way. But yeah, that's kind of the quick and dirty version.
Yeah, isn't that every day? Don't get me wrong, I love what I do, but there are much peaks and valleys that occur every single day. But Eric and I actually met. So Eric he has a partner also. That we will do a separate episode with later on. I just wanted to do them separately. But I met RedPrint, I believe, by somebody recommending you guys on Facebook, and I had reached out on Facebook. I was new. Gosh, when did we say we met? Like 5 years ago?
I think something like that. It was 2018, somewhere between 2018, like might have been the first point of contact, but I think it's like 2020 is whenever it actually like took some traction that way.
Which is kind of crazy. I was just looking for, to take on some more customers, so I reached out to you, and the rest is history.
I actually wanted to ask on that point, was that just like a legitimate cold call? Like, were you doing that at that point?
No, I don't do that.
I know how you feel about it now, but in that moment, is that what was actually taking place? Was that
I was trying to. Yeah, I actually was going on those Facebook posts and searching screen print shops to try to get some more commercial customers at that point in time. But yeah, so I was out looking for you.
In the creepiest way possible. No, it's definitely, jokes aside, it is one of those things that I feel like when you talk to people, especially if this comes up a lot whenever they're starting a business or if they know someone who's starting a business. I feel like more than anything, that is a question that I've been asked. It was something I didn't know what the heck I was doing even to start with. And that is like, how do you get some of those first clients that way? We kind of like sort of stuck our nose up at cold calling. We did a ton of it, drove around in a pickup truck and handed out business cards. And kind of were just like awkwardly standing in front of people, like nervously giving them stuff. Like, do you need T-shirts?
Well, and that is one thing. You
kind of just cut your teeth doing that somehow.
Yeah, I actually I started taking a leadership course, and they talk about your top 5 strengths, and one of the activities within this training session was what's one of your strengths that you were kind of not taken back by or thought that wouldn't be your number one. My first one is woo. It's winning others over, which I'm very good at talking to people. But what people don't see is the fear of rejection that I do have. And I know we've had conversations on this multiple times. So I refuse to cold call. I think my dad and I are about to go to war because he's like, you have to cold call. You have to cold call, in order to grow your business. And I'm like, no, there has to be a different way. It can't be. But so It's funny because I say that, but my partner that I was working with at the time looked at me and said, he kind of had this funny look on his face. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, well, you came in here and sat right down next to me, introduced yourself, told me what you did, and you didn't know me from Adam. He's like, I would have never guessed that about you.
Yeah.
So outward confidence is key. Fake it till you make
Fake it till you make it, right? Yeah. I do. I sincerely, I subscribe to that idea. But I don't know. I kind of see it both ways. Like, I think for you to have resistance to cold calling, maybe especially at this point in your business career, I kind of get it. I think it has its place, and maybe there's times in certain situations where you need to do it.
Sure.
But I don't think it's incredibly effective in a general sense. Like I said, when you're first starting out, it's pretty much all you have. But it's not necessarily the best way of going about it. So if your dad's constantly pushing it, it might not be the right answer in this case. I don't know better, but I don't necessarily think that that's that's an absolute guarantee that's going to make something happen. You can burn a ton of time doing that too.
Now, and some people do believe in still going door to door and cold calling, and some people do believe in that method still, which I think is fine, and if you choose that method, that's perfectly fine. But I'm also one to think outside of the box. So which I'm not saying that is not thinking outside of the box, but trying to go more of an untraditional way. When COVID hit, we had to think of untraditional ways to get customers, because businesses shut down. You couldn't go into businesses. Email became heavy. So, now we look into more email blasts. We have to watch how we promote ourselves on social media, just like you do, because of the target market that we do have. But yeah, so I tend to think outside of the box or traditional sense of cold calling, rather than that. But you're 100% right. When I first started, there is a time and a place for that. When you first start, you're trying to grasp at anything. You're trying to take on anything. And I mentioned in a couple other podcasts or another episode with my mom that we did boat seats and flags. I embroidered so many, unusual things that I look back today and laugh at, because I will never in my life do again.
It's one of those things, I think there's this real romantic sense behind it, where sometimes when you're taking that, you kind of get caught up in the fact of, okay, well, if I do this little job now, it's going to grow to a medium-sized little job, and then that medium-sized little one's going to grow to a slightly bigger version of it. It doesn't really work in that linear way that it sort of seems like it will. At least I've found it that way.
Right.
With that being said, and I just did it today, we had an annual meeting with, it's one of our biggest accounts. I legitimately got that because I gave a presentation at a Boy Scout meeting. It was actually about our online stores that I mentioned in the beginning, and it was just the fact that it kind of resonated. I didn't even pitch it to them of a company of their size. Thank goodness that they reached out to me and asked if it would work. But that kind of goes to show that by putting yourself out there, that kind of goes against the argument of not cold calling. By just kind of throwing it out there, that one stuck. And I think it's been 6 or 7 years at this point that we've been dealing with them. And everyone's my favorite customer, don't get me wrong. They are truly one of my, they're such nice people. The ownership group is just exceptional people. So, so maybe that's a good argument. So actually, I take it back. Cold call every day. If you haven't been doing it, honestly, we should probably cut this podcast and just start cold calling, because that's the only way to actually do this.
Well, another thing I think too, aside from cold calling, and I think we've talked about this several times before, is building relationships. When you want, we go after more of larger size customers. When you go after those large customers, they become familiar with who they're using, even if those people are failing them at, whatever instance in that business. So it's hard for them to want to transition, even if they can't get their stuff for 5 months. They're like, nope, we use them every time. We use them the same, so that in itself, I think, I've started a lot more networking. So going to networking events, these people will see me out in the community. They're seeing what I'm doing and who I am and getting to know, what our business is. So I think that's huge also, is the trust and relationship that you're building. What's your take on that?
Do you feel, well, I was going to ask you to that point, and I will get to an answer there, but do you feel candidly, do you think that those network events, or I don't know what you want to call it, I know we've talked about a couple of them, are you getting a fruitful result from that? And I say that with a condition, meaning I usually don't engage in that. I have in the past, just very limited. and it's not really been something that's been. It really wasn't. Never felt like it was worth our time.
Sure.
But I'm curious,
So,
like, honestly, do you feel like you're getting something from it?
yes, in the long term, yes, but I also think it's not a instant turnaround. So it's not like now you may meet somebody at a networking event and they say, "Oh man, we were just looking for a new apparel company." But 9 times out of 10, you're going to see these people at multiple events. They're going to get to know you. You're going to invite them to your shop. You're going to get to know each other more on a personal level where you're creating that bond. To where we have gotten customers out of that. I'm the type that I like to schmooze and I like to be out there. I like people to, I know that's surprising.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
like to talk. That's shocking, I know. But for everybody that doesn't know me, I'm quite quiet and reserved. But I do like to be out talking to people and really get to know their needs within our industry. So in the long run, I do. But a lot of people go to these thinking that it's going to happen overnight. And I think you actually were a person that taught me that some of these bigger accounts kind of need to, for lack of a better term, fester. Like
sure.
they just need to evolve. Yeah, so that's my answer on that, I guess.
I think that that's something too, and I really do mean this. Like, I don't come from a place of arrogance when I say this, but I think that that's always been my strong suit. Frankly, that's like been my meal ticket here at the shop. Is I have, I think, a good sort of sixth sense for whenever we're kind of like onto something, and that's the ones like you were saying, maybe fester, cook, whatever you want to call it. Like, you have to kind of see it through. You have to be persistent but not annoying. Like, be there because that opportunity. You want to make sure that if somebody does drop a ball, you're there to pick it up and run with it. But also,
Right.
like, don't be up there behind and is super annoying. So, kind of like being in the mix is like an art in and of itself. Um, and I don't think it's like an easy thing for everybody to grasp. At least I've seen that it seems to be like a struggle. But again, I've just kind of been able to find that way, and it's worked out extremely well for us. Whether this would translate in other facets, I don't know, but I
Right.
do think in a lot of instances I've become people's like go-to for t-shirts and other stuff that we don't necessarily do or advertise. But I think if you just give a really, really like honest and good customer service experience, people just rely on it and they don't get it that frequently. So
Yeah,
we get
absolutely.
business from stuff that we've never touched before, and I'm in there like, no problem, sure, yeah, we do. I do it, in the back of my truck. Of course, I've never even looked at the thing before. So yeah, you kind of like gauge
Yes.
that, and I think as time goes on, you get a better sense for, oh yeah, like we can do this. That's no problem at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one thing you taught me too is, you know, with cold calling is great to get new customers, but it's also more important to remember your current customers and take care of them. I'm sure you have an instance where you've dealt with a company, and I can tell you in our embroidery industry specifically with digitizing, when you get a logo put into an embroidery format, it's called digitizing. And when you send that out to a digitizer, they send it back. That is 90% of an embroidery business, is the digitizing of a logo.
Sure.
So when it comes back, it's perfect for like the first 3 times. And then fourth time, it's almost like they're handing you off to the newbie because it like goes downhill from there. It's like they want to, catch you and reel you in. And then as soon as they've got you on the hook, they, like pass the buck. So I don't know
I
if you've
think
ever had that experience before, but
that's definitely something I can speak to, and I'm going to kind of go on the other side of that argument too and say, I think that's like the conundrum. There's a freaking college word if I ever threw one out there. That is like the difficulty, the conundrum of what we're doing here. So if you're good at it, in your case, you're exceptionally good at it. I don't mind saying that.
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate
You
it.
know how to like have that customer service touch. At the same time, you need to have a life, hopefully somewhat outside of that shop. So if you're
Sure.
offering that and you're the one who's providing that, it's really difficult, and it's something that we've brought in consultants for this exact reason, to try to like, I don't know what you would call it. We are entrenched. We need to dig back out of the entrenchment,
Sure.
and not be so deep seated into it, and try to make it a policy, but with 2 T's. You have to have the right person there to be able to do it. So sometimes it's like a personality type more than I think even like, here's the instructions on how to go get a customer. It doesn't work like that. But you kind of have to feel your way through it while also not being a complete zombie, like, or a workaholic about the whole thing. that's probably for a whole nother discussion there too.
Yeah.
But that is something that's like very real and really being proud of, and maybe honing that skill. It's I
Cool.
find it extremely difficult to do it without it becoming like everything I'm doing all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'll touch on that too. Just it's been kind of a total different experience for me now, because I am a mom. I just had a daughter, a year and 2 months ago, and so that kind of flipped me 180 to where, when customers would say, "Hey, I need this, tomorrow or 2 days," I was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, no problem. Like we'll work overnight." My husband and I both would, and now it's like, "Oh wait, I can't. Like I have my daughter, and I can't work with my daughter because she requires all my attention." So, like you said, like kind of creating that balance is ideal in that scenario. So I did have a question for you, and one thing that we have a big difference in is you have a partnership and I am a single owner. So I want to ask you about your partnership aspect, your good, your bad, just for people who are listening if they've ever thought about having a partnership.
So I would say don't ever do it. And tell Bob I said that.
Bobby, if you're listening, we love you.
No, he'll say the same exact thing. It truly, I think I have a kind of a unique perspective on this. I not only am an entrepreneur, I also come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I've had some perspective of actually both. So my oldest sister, at first off, my entire family base just shows everybody up. Like it's the worst place in the world to be at like a holiday dinner. Like there's nothing like being the t-shirt guy in the room of all these people that are setting the world literally on fire. But I digress.
Oh, don't discredit yourself.
My oldest sister's in the funeral business. She owns a funeral home and has had a partnership for a long while now. I think she's actually been in the partnership longer than I've been in business, so it's probably over 10 years now. I probably should know, but I just can't think of it. And I've gotten some really good, bad, indifferent sides of that just from what she's shared with me and what I've been able to see. As well, my father's been in a couple different businesses of his own, and he, like you, is a sort of a daytime sole proprietor, but he also later in his career ended up getting into a partnership, and now is perhaps even working on another one. So with that said, I did get a little bit of an early exposure to how it can kind of all work in a different mix, and this is kind of a generic statement, but it has to be the right people doing it. I think oftentimes like partnerships get blamed for failing because they're partnerships. It's probably that the people weren't a good mix for each other. I'm proud to say that I think me and Bob genuinely this can't get aired, so you're going to have to take this down, but we do a great job complementing each other. Even if we're at each other's necks,
I would
it's
agree.
still always at the benefit of the company.
Sure.
And that's kind of what you need. It's truly like a unique partnership, a unique business relationship that way. If everyone has the business's best interest in mind, sometimes you'll concede even though it hurts your feelings or whatever the case may be. That's kind of the name of the game. But I don't think everybody has that, that way of kind of going about them with someone else. And it doesn't mean
Right.
that it's a bad thing or a good thing. It just means that it might not be the right fit.
Right.
But in our case, I say it, like I know we couldn't do what we do without it being, like I can't do what I'm doing now without Bob doing what he does. And I would
Right.
hope, even though he won't, I think he would say the same thing the other direction. So I have a ton of respect for him. I think that's bigger than anything to you. You have
Huge.
to genuinely respect that person, and because it's really personal stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like a
Yes.
family member. In my experience, it's really like a
Absolutely.
member of your family. So you have to be able to fight well and kind of go through all that stuff and still come out the other end, at least not too bloodied up.
Absolutely.
That's the name of the game. So yeah, if anybody was ever going to consider it, and I've had people ask me about it, I don't like shy away from it. I certainly don't think it can't work. But just really be sure who it is you're doing it with, and if you have any trepidation or something, bring it up. Like talk about it. Why not talk
Right.
about it ahead of time instead of 6 years into it when you're ready to kill each other?
Yes, and that's one thing with me. I will say I am one to be very weary to ever get into a partnership, just because I am very strong-willed. And not to say that it couldn't work by any means. Like, I mean, I say I'm the owner of Embroidum, but my husband and I own Embroidum together. And it's a lot like a marriage, I would say. It's working through finances, it's working through problems and coming out on the other side and compromise, a lot of compromise, which is business in general. But, I will say I am one to shy away from any type of partnership. My husband will say, oh, we should do this. And I'm like, no. But and I guess that's fear of the unknown. But I've talked to Bobby about this. I've talked to, you about this before. So I just like to get different aspects of business.
Don't ever do it. Don't ever do it.
Don't ever do it.
If dude's
Run
name's
the
Bob
opposite.
or Robert or Bob, run the other way. Yeah, you've done everything wrong. And it is, I have to say too, because you brought it up, I'm not married yet. I am working on it actively, as you know.
Engaged.
But I can definitely say that my fiance, Danielle, is truly, I mean this, and Bob's wife, I'm sure I can mention Courtney too, they're just as much entrenched in this as we are. For
Absolutely.
us to be able to go and do what we're doing, that means somebody else is picking it up. And that doesn't mean even outside the business. There's plenty of times Danielle and Courtney both have been in here. It wasn't that long ago. Danielle was catching shirts at the end of the dryer just because we needed it. Or she'll sit in here and answer the phones and just bail me out. That's the kind of stuff that it takes a village.
It does.
They don't get the recognition they deserve. So definitely I'm throwing that out there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing before we go, I wanted to ask you if you've had time to think about this now. What is one scenario where you have had to laugh through the pain in business, or in your business specifically?
It's not maybe the one that we had discussed maybe pre-podcast, but there's one. I can't get real specific with it, but there has been, this is hitting all of the notes at once. There's been a particular customer of ours that we really sought out from the beginning. We kind of found them because we wanted to work inside that industry. And it's one that we're very passionate about. It happens to be automobiles. So, in gathering this customer, we'll just say that red flags were waving from the first instance.
That you were just batting off.
Oh my God, dude, we just drove through them in a semi truck. We got killed by these things, and we just whatever. And there was this point where Bob and I were very much on the same, we were both in the semi truck driving through the red flags. He smartly was like, buddy, come on, it's time. We gotta sort of figure out what's going on here and maybe dig into a little deeper. So we'll say he kind of hopped out. I don't know why. I just kept going into this.
Get full force through it.
Good Lord. Literally, it was not working, so I'm I'll just force it even more. But there was, a ton of friction with us and, this particular rep that we were working with. And I say us, it was truly me. And it came to a head at a certain point, and we sort of thought that this was going to be the end of it. And again, I'm skipping over a ton of details, I realize, but it was it was part of what we were doing. We were hitting deadlines. We were providing jobs. We were getting paid for those jobs too. It wasn't anything dramatic. It was just that it was always very contentious as we'd get to that point. As this all kind of came to, a head, the orders naturally stopped coming in. And we frankly were kind of thankful for it because it just felt like maybe it was never a good fit. It did end up turning itself around where, we ended up getting back into this situation again, and it was absolutely again, he was definitely not on board. I was very much on board. I'm I can fix this. We can make this right. I had myself convinced. You can imagine some of the old, the old scabs kind of got picked, and maybe some old things kind of popped up. So I want to say it was getting contentious between me and my business partner through this. It was rough in a position that we typically don't find ourselves in. I kid you not, we just would find ways to laugh about the stuff. Most of the time it was the things that were being probably said but to us and by us and whatever, but it was those behind closed door conversations. We had to make humor of the thing because at a certain point we committed. He was in it whether he wanted to be or not. I was in it whether I wanted to be or not, and we just kind of had to laugh about it or frankly cry. So there was a couple really excruciatingly long nights for 2 weeks of getting this particular job all situated. And on in a weird way, it somehow made us, it got us closer when it was all said and done without it sounding cheesy. I confidently can tell you that's it. We'll never, ever, ever go back to that well. But we turned, I think, an extremely negative process, an extremely negative customer experience, we'll say, from our side, into a positive by just trying to find the humor in it. Instead, if you're in a frame of mind where you can kind of find the positives, I think you can kind of get through this stuff. Even when it is 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, the shop's 110 degrees and I'm ready to like throw something at him.
Yes.
If you can kind of make jokes, giggle, and laugh about farts or something, whatever, like, just be immature, it works. Like, it just helps. You have to find the humor in it.
Well, and one story we will leave our listeners with. I was trying not to like die while you're talking. I just kept thinking about it. Is we gotta tell about the guy that touched Bobby.
Is this that's happened more than once, Bethany. I mean, he's been touched in more ways than you can even think of.
Do you remember this one particular customer? He's not a customer of ours anymore, thank God. But he was so picky. He wanted a very specific fit of the shirt on his bicep. He wanted the logo to be specific he was asking us, okay, is that logo an inch this way, an inch and a half this way, 2 inches down on this? I mean, he was beyond particular. And
then he came to our shop and started taking his shirt off. Yeah, right. He just literally derobed on our like shop floor. Like, please, first off, you haven't introduced yourself. Secondly, get the hell out of here. Yeah.
Hello.
He did. He held.
Oh yeah, he tried on the shirt there, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he said something about like a big guy or something, and then that's when we were both like, you know what? I think we're good, man. You're good to go. Yeah, well, don't call us, we'll call you, kind of thing.
Yeah, and what happened? Like, we didn't tell Bobby he was coming or something, and he just popped up for his shirts and like walked in, made himself right at home.
Yeah, like literally, I'm not exaggerating.
What did he hug Bobby, or he rubbed? Oh, he rubbed his arm, didn't he?
Took his shirt off to instead of just being like, here's it was the sleeve, which is all the better. Like a normal person would be like, here's the sleeve print in question. He felt the need to like take his shirt off, then hold the sleeve in front of Bob, and then I guess in the process of him taking it off, either lost his balance or whatever, and then was holding. So there's a shirtless man that he hasn't even introduced himself to yet, and he's just holding Bob's arm, and he's like, well, I mean,
And if you know Bobby, he is not a touchy-feely person.
He's not, yeah.
He's not a hugger. He's not...
Definitely not, no.
He's a personal space type individual.
I just want, to have... I regret not... I came here, but I was here late. I really would have loved to have seen that.
I think we need to rephrase it. Like, he was just, caressing Bobby's arm, as he's standing...
Yeah, I mean, romance, who knows? I'm not here to judge by any means. Yeah, that's so
But that was great. Just knowing that made Bobby uncomfortable was phenomenal.
What the hell are you doing in that instance, as that gentleman did? Like, what are you thinking?
Yes.
I never, ever in my... it's a burden I'll never have to, to bear. I will never walk into a place and be like, you know what I think I need to do? What? Leave and send a picture if you have to.
Seriously, have your wife take a picture or something, of your sleeve, like this.
Anything. He's like, yeah, but I like how it fits on this bicep, but I want to just show you one more thing here and just lets her eat, man. Just, sends it. Yep. There was an instance, too, I will keep it super brief, and I'm probably spoiling this, but there was a similar instance where we have an absolutely immaculate 2009 Chevy Express van that we use as our delivery van, as you know. It's truly
immaculate.
Showroom quality. It's breathtaking how beautiful this
no
thing
rust, nothing.
None. It's beautiful. It's from the South, and when I say from the South, it's like the South of Pittsburgh, but it's... when we first got it, we ended up buying new wheels and tires off of Facebook Marketplace, which that's, taking your life in your hands there. Literally, Bob went into the South Hills to go get some of these wheels and tires. This man had a normal home, like a suburban type home in a neighborhood. In the back had shipping containers, 2 of them stacked next to each other in his backyard, and opens the door and tells Bob, I can't really get in there. I guess his leg was hurt or something. He's like, you climb in the back there. The wheels and tires are in the back. Bob started to go, and said as he's halfway through, the guy's like, I'm not going to lock you in here or anything like that. Listen, dude, did you get the wheels or not? You got to... whatever you had to do to get him, he got a great deal, but...
I hope his wife had tracking on him and...
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that guy was gonna lock the door. Bob's a strong dude. He was probably able to push it back open, but yeah, he was almost taken and he been shipped to. Mm-hmm. He was already ready to go. I think they were just going to airdrop him right out of there and send him in.
Airdrop them, pick them up.
There's just a guy like trying to get some wheels.
Oh gosh, my gosh, that's how people get killed, Bobby.
That's
Jeez,
exactly right. Don't trust a guy who has got shipping containers. That's for sure. You can't be
that
going
makes
too
you
far.
crawl into them.
I
Was
mean,
there candy in the
to
bag?
make that joke again, like taking the shirt off. What are you? What? Just don't say anything in that moment, and you're fine. Just don't.
The
say anything.
scenarios that we go through in our business, we're like,
It's a
what?
All
Why
in
did,
there.
why did that even happen?
Mhm.
All right, Eric. Well, thank you very much for being on the
Thank you.
podcast
This was
today.
great. Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening today, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye bye.
See you.
And that wraps up another great episode of Business Bloopers Laughing Through the Pain. We hope you had a good laugh and maybe even found some inspiration in the stories we shared today. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We love hearing your feedback and any bloopers that you'd like to share. Join us next time for more laughs, lessons, and maybe a few more of our own business blunders. Until then, keep smiling, keep learning, and remember, in the world of business, it's okay to laugh at yourself. Thanks for listening.